So the other day, Washington announced that Joe Biden's going to be heading to Papua New Guinea. Now, why is President visiting Port Moresby a big deal? So, A, it's never been done in history of the United States. But secondly, and most importantly, it indicates that the United States is starting to care about their standing within the South Pacific. So if you haven't been paying attention, last year, the Solomon Islands, China signed a security agreement with the Solomon Islands, which in theory could ultimately lead to a Chinese base eventually being stationed on the island, which has been freaking out both the United States and in Australia in particular, as they're less than 2,000 kilometers away. So a lot of this has to do with the fact that the West, particularly the United States, has been pretty much ignoring the South Pacific, especially since the collapse of the Soviet Union. So in 1993, they got rid of their embassy in the Solomon Islands, which, if you think about it, I mean, it's really expensive. It takes a lot of cash to operate all these embassies and station these diplomats in every single corner of the globe. But just because the collapse of the Soviet Union, the U.S. is like, the South Pacific doesn't matter anymore because nobody is going to threaten our hegemony. Well, as you know, that's not the case. China is creeping on the come up. So the United States should strategically be paying attention to these islands. So due to the fact that they haven't been courted by the United States, China signed the agreement, and America, they're starting to freak out, so they realize their mistakes. So that's why Biden is going to Papua New Guinea, and the fact that he's visiting PNG is a very good thing for Washington strategically. Now, I'd also say I hope that the United States not only continues doing this in the South Pacific, especially given all the intelligence community, the rumors that between the years 2025 and 2027, there could very well be an invasion by Beijing into Taiwan, which means that the U.S. needs to get a strategic stranglehold, all that they can within the Pacific Ocean. But secondly, while the Ruski Bear, while they are preoccupied with Ukraine, I'd say they need to do the same thing in Central Asia. So the Russian Sino Dragon, they've been paying attention to the fact that Moscow is preoccupied with trying to invade Ukraine. It's just taking up all their attention and resources. So historically, the Central Asian states have been within the orbit of Moscow, as they were previously part of the Soviet Union, so that makes sense. But now the Central Asian states are all beginning to question whether Moscow is really that great of an ally, especially because, a lot of it was based upon not only historic economic ties, but security guarantees stemming from Moscow. But as you can see with Ukraine, where there was a security guarantee stemming from the 1994 Budapest Agreement, where Ukraine gave up their nuclear weaponry to Russia in exchange for guarantees on their territorial sovereignty, the security guarantee from Moscow doesn't mean much. So the Sino Dragon's been salivating at the thoughts of being able to attract the Central Asian states away from the Moscow geopolitical sphere of influence and pulling it into their own orbit. And they've been doing a pretty good job. So I know that Antony Blinken, he visited the Central Asian states last year, but he needs, in Washington in general, needs to do more to not only, again, going back to South Pacific, bring all those states into their orbit, especially if there does happen to be a Taiwan invasion within the next decade, but also to start paying attention to the Central Asian states, which have also been ignored. I believe that with the new, Kazakhstan, Nursultan, and now you have Tokayev, you have Shavkat Mirziyoyev in Uzbekistan instead of the previous Islam Karimov. So I believe these new rounds of Central Asian leaders are probably more amenable to being courted by Washington than those leaders of the past. So I'd say it's a good time for Washington to start, long story short, paying attention to countries that historically they've been ignoring for the last several decades.